Hey guys, welcome to the Red Vault again. This is Tolga SERT. Today we will compare expensive and cheap Stratocasters. So, here's the Stratocaster episode of my new series Worth It. Today we will compare the cheap and expensive Stratocasters. But before continue to the video, I want to remind that please don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. Also, I know there are lots of similar contents on YouTube, but the main difference of this video is today we will investigate those Stratocasters from a different view. Let's say you are a metal enthusiast and most of the time you use lots of distortion, lots of high gain tones, and your guitars most of the time have humbuckers to get those heavy stuff. But also you want to purchase a Stratocaster, or you want a Stratocaster just for noodling around or use that time to time, or you're a beginner guitar player and your budget is not that high and you are wondering sometimes what's the difference between 200-300 Stratocasters from a $2,000 Stratocaster. So if you are a true Stratocaster guy, a true blues or soft rock, that kind of tunes enthusiast, this video is not for you. Today we have three different guitars, which are a Fender American Standard Stratocaster, a Squier Chinese Bullet Strat, and there's an SX Vintage Custom Handmade Stratocaster. You probably know the difference between them, feel the difference between them, and even a Standard Stratocaster is not good enough for you. But if you're a guy who, like that I mentioned before, today we will talk about those guitars on spec basis, on price basis. We will compare the tones of those guitars. So the main aim is it logical to spend that kind of money for an time-to-time interest, or a cheap Stratocaster with fine adjustments and some minor upgrades maybe can be good enough for that kind of purpose? So let's check the guitar. First of all, we have a Fender American Standard, as I mentioned before. This guitar has an alder body, maple neck with maple fretboard. We have 2-point synchronized tremolo on the guitar, and also we have deluxe staggered, cast sealed tuners, custom shop Fat 50s pickups on the guitar. Actually, we have another quite similar guitar, which is an SX Alder Strat. I talked about this guitar in previous weeks in a modification and cheap guitar purchase guide video. But simply we have an alder body again, and there's a maple neck with maple fretboard. We have Artec pickups. We have cheap 6-screw tremolo. SX called that just vintage tremolo. And we have SX branded tuners. Also, we have another guitar, which is my first guitar, my Squier Bullet Stratocaster, Bullet Strat. This is a 2007 COB Bullet Stratocaster. I just figured out while I was trying to get the information from the serial number, and there are CY and COB type of bullet struts. I think it was about the body thickness and a little bit of craftsmanship difference, but they said the COB is a little bit better and we have the COB. Also, I made a little modification on the pickguard and the pickup covers. We went all black in that guitar, but the main difference is the body is basswood, the neck is maple, but we have a rosewood fretboard. The current versions of that guitar have laurel fretboards also, and they have poplar bodies. So we have kinda inverted version of a Fender Stratocaster. Let's check those guitar one by one. Let's start with the definer. Let's start with our benchmark. That guitar has nearly $2,000 price tag. It's a little bit higher in my country. We won't talk about the stability because it's not an issue. There's a little bit of issue about the fretworks. You probably watch that guitar's review video. It's a true beauty. The paint is very good. They used high-end hardware. There may some upgrades even for those kind of stuff too. But we are not a true Stratocaster guy. We will just play that guitar time to time. So we are trying to figure out spending $2,000 or spending $200, which is logical. But when you are holding that guitar, you know you are holding something nice. And let's go to the Squier Strat. Let's see what's the difference. You can instantly feel the problems on the neck. It's about the finish. I think it's much more slippery, and that's my preference. Some of you guys like the matte finish, I know that, but I would go with the slippery finish, the shiny one. About the frets, actually the Chinese version has better crowning. I can't feel the frets. It's really nice. And it's the interesting part. I know the bridge is cheap, tuners are cheap, the hardware in general is cheap, but the tuning was never an issue for that guitar, and I played this guitar for a really long time. I spent lots of time. Of course, there will be some difference tone-wise. We will observe that too, but I played both guitars and I know there's a difference. But you know, the main beauty of the Stratocaster comes from its simplicity. And you know, when you can make a few simple things right, you will get something good. This guitar is the proof of it. What can I say? I know when you look at that, you see some cheap stuff around, but it's not feel that bad in your hands. And the guitar's price tag is $200 or $250 in my country. It's that cheap. But the neck feel is totally worse than Fender, but I think it's not unsolvable. I could modify that to make it look like just a standard Strat. And let's check the SX. I talk about that guitar too in my previous videos. I think SX is the evil brand who trying to serve the good in its own ways. There were a lawsuit comes from Fender back in the day because of the headstock issue. Also, there are lots of myths going around for that brand, like their woods, like their forests had some connection to Fender, that kind of myths you can read all around the internet. But we have an alder body again, and there's a maple wood again. We have cheap, actually it's not cheap, because if you watch my previous video, there's a Mexican Fender bridge in that guitar, but actually it comes with a cheap bridge too. And we have cheap tuners too from SX. Also, the previous owner of that guitar upgraded the pickups to an Artec, if we can say that an upgrade, but it's an upgrade, it's a modification. I know that guitar has some issues about crowning and leveling. You know, the frets are the first problem for a budget guitar, and the previous owner sent the guitar to a guitar tech and handled all the crowning and leveling issues. I want to mention something too. We have alder body on this guitar and that guitar, and please share your thoughts on the comments about how we can put a price tag on how we can put a price tag on wood. Yeah, we can categorize the woods by their aesthetic, you know, like flamin' maples or lots of different type of top woods, cover woods. But how we can identify an alder body like good wood or bad wood? I never understood that. So we have alder body on this and alder body on that. Maybe the discontinuities on the wood can be a definer, but in general, I think when the price tag goes from $200 to $2,000, it's not about some discontinuities on the wood. It's mainly about the hardware or the craftsmanship, like the paint, like the frets. Also, there's a price tag on the logo on the headstock too. We can't ignore that. But let's discuss that issue on the comments, because I believe if you can put similar hardware on a similar wood and adjust the guitar just fine, you probably would get somewhere. Also, the backside of that guitar is quite similar to that Fender. What can I say? Probably you already get my idea at this point, but we will check those guitars tone-wise, but we already knew we can get what we need from plugins, and even using a plugin can be a blasphemy for a guy who loves to play SRV. You know, they always need that shiny pedals. So let's hear the sounds of those guitars, and then I'm gonna share my closing thoughts. So here's the conclusion for me. You can travel from point A to point B either with a Rolls-Royce or a Fiat. But you can't ask to use Rolls-Royce, is it worth the money? Because some of those money spent for the ideas, for the fantasy, for the satisfying some of those stuff in minds. But we can easily say Fender Stratocaster is a Rolls-Royce for the guitar world. Of course, there are lots of ultra high-end stuff like signatures, like 60 years old Stratocasters, but you can't go wrong with an American Stratocaster. This is it. But because of the simplicity of the Stratocaster, you can get fairly good for a fairly cheaper price. Like that SX. I have to say, the feel of a bullet Strat is hollow. The neck feels weird. Also, you can feel the cheapness in its sound. But this SX is something different. It feels good in my hands. It sounds nice to my ears. Of course, probably you will hear lots of difference with a P2P Marshall and a real Centaur distortion or overdrive. I don't even know what that pedal is. Just there are lots of clones of it because it's highly rare, as I know. But I'm not a person who wants to spend additional $5,000 to feel the real difference of a $2,000 guitar. So for the people like me or the beginners, you can achieve lots of stuff with an SX or a Squier bullet Strat. Of course, a Fender is a Fender. Still, I'm a little bit worried about the fret issue because the fretwork of my Squier bullet Strat is better than that 2011 Standard Stratocaster. Also, an additional story, before purchasing that SX, I always planning to purchase an Fender Stratocaster, and my main justification way is I have a rosewood Strat, I should buy a maple Strat too, and purchasing another bullet or cheap Strat is meaningless for me because I already have one, and the tone difference of a maple and rosewood Stratocaster is not an issue for me. If I can find a good deal for a Fender Stratocaster with maple neck, especially a white and maple neck, I thought I would probably buy that. But in a trading, this SX came to me because of the maple neck and the performance of it. I erased the idea of purchasing a maple Fender Stratocaster, but sometimes I still crave for a maple Stratocaster with white or cream color just because of the Malmsteen stuff I mentioned in my previous video. But instead of spending a few grand on a Stratocaster, there are lots of stuff I can purchase before a Strat. So let's close the video. So I hope you enjoyed the content. I hope I can add additional information on YouTube amongst all the guys who can talk till the morning about radiuses or neck shapes or the pickup heights or lots of different stuff, lots of different minor details about Stratocasters. But you know me, I hope I can express my point of view about those guitars well. If you are a guy like me or a beginner, I hope you can get some ideas instead of worrying about minor details with the information from those Stratocaster enthusiast guys. This is it. This was Stratocaster episode of Worth It. If you enjoyed the content, please subscribe, like, make a comment. It will help a lot to the growth of channel. Till the next video, see ya.